Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? On this, my third official draw and talk session. What are we going to draw today? No idea. I never have any ideas of what I'm going to draw until I draw it. I got this light. It's got a lot of contrast going on here. Let's see if I can adjust that a little bit. Okay, no. Doesn't like that either. That might be about as good as it's gonna get. I mean, I guess if I just turned it off altogether, I'll turn it on and deal with it for right now. So, peeps, how are we all doing today? Hope we're doing good. Yeah, I was thinking maybe like some kind of weird. Everything I'm gonna draw is probably gonna be weird, but you know, I don't know. Some weird just cityscape or something goofy, something goofy. Start by making a little fence line. When I was working out in North Dakota for a while, we put up fences. I worked for a fencing company, and we'd put up these big huge fences, usually around oil facilities. I was always amazed because, the fence was the cheapest part of the whole thing. And we'd have these, we were finishers, so people would come in and they'd pound these posts in, and then we'd come and put the fabric, we called it, the fence, the chain link fence on, and all the, the bracing and the barbed wire and everything like that. But it was also the last thing that had to happen for the facility wherever we were at to open up. So a lot of times we'd have these suits, we'd have these professional type people all kind of up our butts about, hey man, when's the fence going to be done? Hey man, when's the fence going to be done? I was just like, Jesus. I never understood that, we got this gazillion-dollar oil facility, and then it can't go online until this fence is done for insurance reasons, because somebody could stumble through or walk onto the property and get hurt and sue. That was the whole reason. Sorry, my sinuses are messing with me. So that's the whole reason that it was like that. And I just thought, how ridiculous is that? But that's how they did it. And, yeah. We'd put up these huge fences all over the state to these crazy facilities. So I've seen a lot of these crazy facilities everywhere. And North Dakota is an interesting place. I don't know if you've ever been there, then you know. I live in northern Michigan, and we get a lot of snow, but it gets butt crack cold out there. And I think the coldest weather I'd ever worked in out there was about 42 below. I know it sounds crazy. You almost probably want to be like, yeah, right, dude. And it's like, nope, did it for sure. Did 42 below. We would work for like 10 minutes. And then we would come in, go in the truck and sit there and cry because it was so freaking cold. I don't know if you've ever experienced cold like that, but it's something else. It'll suck the life out of you. And, I gotta hand it to anybody that can do that kind of shit. I didn't know I could do it until I did it. There's a lot of things I didn't know I could do until I did it out there. Good experience, though. I learned a lot of stuff. Learned how a lot of stuff works. And, overall, I'm happy about the whole experience. It was cool. It was a nice thing. Met some very good people. I don't talk to them that much, but I mean, with Facebook and all that kind of stuff, it's easy to talk to people, that you haven't seen in a while. You do, hey, how's it going, man? What's new? There's a couple of them who I talk to pseudo regularly on there, And they're doing good. Life goes on, What can I say? Life goes on, I'm putting in the barbed wire right now. That was one of the things I kind of liked doing the best out of the fencing operation. Was putting the barbed wire up. That was always interesting. It would click into these little holes right here, like I'm drawing. You would click it in because the barbed wire has the little thingies, you know. It has like, these things, you know. And those things would click into these little holes on the barb arm. They called these things. I might be a little slacky on some of my terminology. It's been a minute since I did that stuff, but you know, you learn a lot of stuff, you know, working for these places. And it was fun, man. It was fun. I didn't make any money, you know. I didn't make all that oil money people talk about. I made send back home and take care of my kid money, pay for myself out there money. I paid off a couple debts, and I got an old Honda CRX out of the deal that I got in storage, and I've been waiting to fix up for 10 years. And yeah, hopefully I will one day. That'd be cool. I met a lot of other guys out there from different parts of the country that, you know, they all wanted the big, huge Duramax, you know, truck that cost $100,000. And I remember that one time I pulled up to the yard, you know, in the parking lot in the morning. So I was the yard guy. And there was a bunch of those. Everybody had a nice ass car except for me. I had a paid off car though. I remember saying that to one of them once. They're like, geez, everybody gonna get your Duramax. And I'm like, oh man, I'm never gonna get one of those fucking things, man. For one, they're garbage, you know. Number two, why would, you know, just so I can drive it to work? I took that old Honda, it had 246,000 miles on it, and I drove it back to Michigan several times. I drove it in the winter because North Dakota didn't get a lot of snow, so the clearance on it was fine. And yeah, it worked out great. It was a great little car. Like I said, I still have it. You know, one day I'm gonna fix it up. It's just been sitting in storage for 10 years. And luckily it's inside, so it's all good. And it's gonna be a full rebuild sooner or later. Who knows, maybe my kid will do it, you know, I don't know. But yeah, man. A lot of people out there I knew were just effing around, you know. They didn't save any freaking money, they didn't do anything. And that's fine, that's their life, you know, if that's what you want to do. But a lot of people don't realize that, you know, and they think, oh, you're out in North Dakota, where's your millions of dollars, you know, why aren't you? And it's like, well, I just paid my bills, that's all I did. I just paid my bills, nothing crazy. Nothing too crazy. So what are we going to do here? We got our tension bars and our thingies in there, so, you know, we'll go with a little bracing on these guys like it's an end deal. And we'll clip that over and put the little bar across. Anyway, yeah, North Dakota was okay. Like I said, met a lot of people, did a lot of cool stuff. There's still a lot of stuff that I learned that I know how to, you know, that I do occasionally today. I learned how to, you know, use a Bobcat, and I got pretty good at that. Those things are handy. If I ever had extra 100 grand laying around, I'd probably buy one of those. But yeah, it's like I said, they're pricey. But if you know how to use one, though, it's a good thing, you know. It's a useful thing. Now it doesn't matter, you know. Say, you know, what if I'm in an emergency situation somewhere, and they're like, oh my God, you know, we need somebody to use the Bobcat, you know. I can step up and go, I can use that Bobcat to save those children or whatever, you know, to deliver supplies to the grief-stricken area. I'm that guy. I don't know. It's just a funny thing. So yeah, I don't really know what I'm drawing right now. I'm just kind of drawing this fence line. It's going to be to like an old UFO hangar or something like that. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. But yeah, working out there was an interesting thing, you know. I had to leave my kid and his mom back here, and I had to go out there and make a go of it. And it was a crazy situation, you know. I was working in restaurants and stuff out here and making shit money, and And I told myself, man, if you need to get out of here, you need some change. And if you're gonna take care of that kid, it's gonna cost more than, you know, the money I was making at restaurants and stuff. So, with a hope and a dream and a belly full of hot air, I went out to North Dakota and I figured it out. You know, it was a crazy situation because, like, I drive out there, never been out there. I just know that it's close enough, 700 miles, and there's work, you know, real work. So I went out there and applied for a job, and the guy's like, this guy I'd talked to. So I mean, I was driving out there with a bit of a plan. And the guy I talked to was like, oh yeah, you know, come on out here and you get a job right away. We're looking for people, blah, 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 for this fence company. And so on that phone call, I drove out there, hooked up with a buddy that was already, well, not a buddy, but an acquaintance that was already out there to have somewhere to stay. And I drove out there. And, yeah. Got to town and went to the place that the guy said, hey, you know, come on by. And he's just like, all of a sudden, like, oh, well, I don't have a job for you. It's like, you kidding me? You know? What? And he's like, yeah, I don't have a job for you. Sorry, you know, whatever. And I was kind of flabbergasted because I was like, shit, man, I drove all the way out here and I told everybody back home that I had stuff lined up. I just talked to you a week ago and you told me to come out here. So then I went to the place where I was supposed to stay. And the guy he didn't talk to his dad about it. So his dad was like, no. So then I had to sleep in my car for a couple nights. And then one time I was driving around town aimlessly, you know, looking for job, you know, postings and stuff. And I remember seeing a church, big church. And I remember thinking back in my town, like, I know people that have gone to churches to, like, you know, pay a bill or get a bus ticket or something. And I said, I wonder if I go to that church if they'll help me out. So I went to that church, and this big dude, big black dude, Big Mac was his name, helped me out. And they gave me like not a week, like 4 days, I think, of a room at this place called like the Dakota Inn, I believe. And I couldn't believe it, you know, and I'm not really a churchy person, but they helped me out. And I'll never forget that. And with that, I went to that hotel and it gave me a place to at least stay, park my car, take a shower, and have a base operations. And I was looking around, and at that point in time, the boom was going on for a while, so the whole thing wasn't as, it wasn't just like, oh, you're hired, you got a pulse, you're hired. It wasn't like that anymore. And I guess it was people from my town had kind of misrepresented it, but regardless, I was out there, so I decided to just keep looking, and I got a whole lot of, you know, call you back. I didn't have any experience in a lot of stuff, so they were like, nope, nope, nope. And I was like, I'm damned if I will get a cooking job out here that I could just be doing at home next to my kid, you know? So I looked around and looked around and looked around, and then on the last day of my stay, you know, I was out of money. I told myself if I don't get a reply or anything today, I'm out of here. And literally, like at like 4:45 in the afternoon, I got a call from the guy from the original job, the fencing job. And I was literally packing my stuff up in my car and ready to call it quits, tell myself I tried. And, but no. He called, he said, hey, you still need that job? And I said, yeah. He said, be here tomorrow at like 6:15, ridiculous, you know, something like that. And so I did. And I worked there for like, I don't know, 3.5 years or something like that. Pretty crazy. I was able to, you know, pay my bills back home. I mean, it wasn't crazy. They started me off at like $15 an hour in 2013. It's more money than I'd ever made up here at the time, you know. And, pretty quick, I was making $22 an hour, though, after, like, a month. I went out in the field, I did this kind of stuff a lot. I didn't really like it. It was okay, but, I didn't like paying rent for a place, and rent was expensive. They were kind of gouging everybody, so rent was kind of pricey. And, yeah, they offered me a yard gig, the old guy that was working the yard, which is like loading up all the trucks with their stuff they need, or unloading semis, or doing all sorts of stuff. And people didn't like doing that because they thought it was boring. And I said, shit, I like it. I don't mind that kind of thing. For one, I was working by myself pretty much. Instead of having a foreman that was working for somebody else on a gig that, and then sleeping in, some shitty hotel in the middle of nowhere for a week and only seeing my bed on the weekends, I was able to, work, like 6 a.m. to about 5 p.m., go home, sleep in my own bed, in a comfortable bed instead of some hotel, call my kid and stuff every night instead of, being in the middle of the boonies, not having to spend a ton of money. Because you're on the road, you just tend to spend money when you're on the road. It's just how it works. Gas station bullshit and stuff like that. So, yeah, I liked the gig. And then the funny thing is, the way it worked out was, after taxes, I ended up making like $100 a week less. So off of working like around 50 hours a week, I was making only $100 less than when I was making, when I was working like 60 plus hours a week. And I remember talking to the accountant lady. I remember thinking, like, how is this possible that my check is, this many hours, and it's only this little bit less than, this many hours? And she said, oh, well, when it comes to overtime, you have to work this many hours or this many hours. When you work anything in between, it's kind of worthless. And I remember thinking, well, that's ridiculous. So basically she said, in my particular situation, she's like, you either want to work 52 hours or 81 hours. Anything in between is kind of just going to get screwed. I remember thinking, wow.